Hello. Welcome to tonight's bedtime story by Lucid Tales. I hope your day has been sunny and bright, but whether it has been babbling brooks or roaring rapids for you, it's time to relax now. Find somewhere comfortable, maybe your bed or a favourite armchair, and make sure you're ready for sleep. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Take your shoes off if you can, and feel the freedom in your toes, the little loosening that means it's time for bed. Tonight's story is The Soldier and Death, a Russian story about the man who so frightened both heaven and hell that he lived forever. Our story begins long ago and 1,000 miles from anywhere. A soldier, with not a copper penny in his pockets and only 3 dry biscuits in his knapsack, walked home from a long 20 years at war for the Tsar. 1,000 miles he marched, whistling his tuneless whistle, his heart and pockets light, until he chanced across a beggar by the side of the road playing the fiddle. He stood and whistled along. The one couldn't whistle, the other couldn't fiddle, and merry they were. "A merry tune," said the soldier at last. "Is it worth a penny?" asked the beggar. "More," said the soldier, "but alas, I have nothing to give you." The beggar's face fell, and at the sight of him in his misery, he who had been so merry but a moment before, the soldier reached into his knapsack and pulled out one of the 3 dry biscuits. "I do have this biscuit you may have," he said. "You're a good man, son," said the beggar, "and you deserve a better whistle." The soldier laughed and went on his way, and took up his tuneless whistle again. But wonder of wonders, as he walked it changed and became sweet and trilling, almost like a bird. If rubies could whistle, they would have sounded like him. And so on he walked with his beautiful trilling whistle, until he chanced upon another beggar, sat by the side of the road and beating a lively pattern on his drum. The soldier stopped and dropped his knapsack, and whistled and danced along with the beggar's drum in his weary boots. By the time he left the beggar, he was a biscuit lighter, and found that his shambling jig and weary boots was now as light and skilled as a dancer. He merrily whistled and danced on his way down the road, delighting in his new fun. Until a little further down the road, the soldier chanced once more upon a beggar. This time sat shuffling a pack of cards by the side of the road. He dealt them out, one after another, one short of a perfect hand, and without even looking, he reached out and pulled the final card out from behind the soldier's ear. Oh, how he laughed and clapped. "Marvellous," he chuckled. "Worth a penny?" asked the beggar. "More," said the soldier, "but alas, I have nothing to give you." And the soldier thought. He had but a single biscuit in his knapsack, and he was dreadfully hungry. "I have a biscuit you can share with me," he said, and reached into his knapsack to take out his last biscuit. But as he snapped it in half and went to give one half to the beggar, he thought again about how it didn't feel good, did it, giving this man less than the others? It didn't seem right. So he gave him both halves. "You're a good man," said the beggar. "You deserve better luck than to be on your last biscuit. Here, take my cards. They'll never lose for you. And trade me your knapsack for this bag." He held out a black, empty sack, rough spun and worn at the edges. "It's an ugly thing, but remarkable. Call anything you like into it, and it will willingly go." And so the soldier took the cards in the sack and left the beggar his soldier's bag and walked on his way. He walked a warm night and a long day, until that evening he came to a river. Feeling a fool, he stood at the water's edge with his sack, watching a gaggle of geese swimming idly in the stream. "Geese," he cried, "won't you come here and get in this sack?" And lo and behold, 3 geese swam closer to him and waddled happily into his sack. He drew the string tight and slung them across his back and went on his way whistling his ruby whistle. At length he came to an inn and went inside. The innkeeper was only too happy to take 2 of the geese in payment for a room in preparation of the 3rd for the soldier himself. And so the soldier at last had a full belly, eating every last scrap of meat down to the bone and sucking out the marrow before dancing late into the night and at last, before the sun rose, sinking deeply into bed. He did not wake for 3 days, so weary was he, and the innkeeper let him rest. At last, on the 3rd day, the soldier awoke and looked out of the window to see a great palace that had once been beautiful, but was now an abandoned place, dark and cold, with shattered windows. "What is that place?" the soldier asked. "It was the Tsar's palace," said the innkeeper. "He had it built for himself, but no one can live there. It has fallen to the devils." "Devils?" said the soldier. "Every night they pour into the place, and these are devilish devils, with their shouting and yelling and screaming and playing cards and all the other devilries that come into their heads. There's no living in the palace for decent folk. An army tried to rout them, but in the morning there was nothing left but shadows." The soldier laughed. "I may pay them a visit." "It's folly to go near," the innkeeper warned. But folly or not, the soldier went from there directly up to the palace and went inside. It was quiet, as if the walls were holding their breath. He made himself comfortable in the great hall, now filled with cobwebs and carpeted with bones. But the soldier was no stranger to death, nor bones, and so he passed the afternoon quietly, shuffling his cards, whistling and smoking his pipe. Night fell, and he lit a candle. At last, as the bell in the village chimed 12 o'clock, there came a great flapping and yelling, a shouting, a blowing of horns, a scraping of fiddles, a noise of dancing, running, stamping, and the palace full of devils. "That's a nice whistle," said one of the devils, leering close to the soldier. "I want it." "I want his teeth," hissed another. "I want his feet, they look good for dancing," said a third. "What about his soul?" said a fourth. "Well then," said the soldier, "how about a wager? What do you have?" 40 barrels of gold and 60 of silver," said one of the devils. "Done," said the soldier, and dealt out the cards. And won. And won again. "He must be cheating," hissed one of the devils. "Well, I am, and I'm still losing," shrieked another. The soldier dealt a 3rd hand, and won again. By the time the sun rose and the bells chimed for morning, the 40 barrels of gold and 60 barrels of silver were stacked behind the soldier, and the devils were in a fuming rage. "I suppose we should call it a morning," said the soldier. "We shall call it breakfast," hissed a devil, "and you the meal." The soldier tapped his pipe on the table. "First make sure," he said, "who eats whom." The devils leapt forward, but the soldier was too quick for them. He snatched up his old black sack and threw it down on the table. "What do you call this?" he asked them quietly. "A sack," said one of the devils. He smiled. "Then get in it." And with a great screaming and fluttering of wings, the devils were dragged as if by magic into the sack. The soldier drew the string tight and swung the sack above his head, hurling it hard into the wall. Then he took it down into the village and to a blacksmith. "This sack is much too stiff," he said. "Could you give it a beating with that hammer of yours?" The blacksmith slung the sack onto his anvil and hammered at it with mighty blows. "Oh, let us out! Let us out!" cried the devils. "We are your own people!" But the blacksmith, who had seen the soldier come down from the palace, merely grinned. "Are you?" He kept hammering, as though he could flatten not just the devils, but the anvil too. "Let us out, soldier!" cried the devils. "We will never return, we swear it! No devil should come within 100 miles of this place! Let us out!" The soldier let the blacksmith place a few more blows for luck, then thanked the man and swung his sack back onto his back. When he was back at the palace, surrounded by those barrels of gold and silver, he opened the mouth of the sack full of whimpering devils. "You won't return? Nowhere within 100 miles, he demanded. The devils agreed and erupted out of the bag like a swarm of bees, desperate to get away from the ruthless soldier. But he, being wily, caught one by the foot and refused to let go until the devil swore to serve him faithfully whenever it was needed. He cut off the devil's cloven hoof to remind it of its promise, and released it to scramble after its brethren. When the devils returned to hell, they slammed all of the doors behind them and set sentries at every gate against the coming of the soldier with the sack. The Tsar was well pleased with this soldier who had saved his palace from the devils, and took him into his heart as his son. The soldier lived many happy years, a rich gentleman living in the palace. He was married, and time brought him a bonny son, but life was ever fickle, and death must have the last laugh. And so it was that the soldier's son became gravely ill, with a fever no one could cure. The Tsar sent for doctors and apothecaries and healers from across the land, and the room filled with grey beards, who shook their heads and looked solemn. In time they left, ceding to priests who prayed and swung incense, and a man in black came to measure a coffin. "What shall we do?" his wife wept. "My knees are weary of kneeling, my lips are sore from praying, and yet he does not heal. It is as though the devil has taken him." And the soldier thought, "Now, where the devil is that devil of mine?" In a puff of smoke the devil appeared, missing one foot. "I am here, your excellency. At your command." The soldier was startled, but he introduced the devil to his wife and explained what was happening to his son. "If you can cure him, you can have your foot back," he said. The devil produced a glass which he held up for the soldier to see through. "Look through here, your excellency," it said, its voice taut from fear of the man who had taken its foot and had it beaten black and blue. "What do you see?" "I see a small creature, like an old woman," the soldier said. "That is death, your excellency," said the devil. "Where does she stand?" "By my son's feet," said the soldier. "Ah, very good," said the devil. "Then he shall recover. If she stood by his head, there would be no hope at all, your excellency. Now take some of the water from this glass and sprinkle it on your son's forehead." The soldier did as he was bid, and happy day his young son awoke, the fever broken, as hale and hearty as ever he had been. The soldier's wife wept with joy and scooped her son up into her arms. "Thank you," the soldier said to the devil, and returned its foot. "Will there be anything else, your excellency?" asked the devil. The soldier thought. "Give me that glass, and I'll release you from your promise." The devil immediately handed him the glass. "Thank you, your excellency," he hissed before disappearing. And so the soldier set himself up as a miracle healer, travelling the land with his glass. If death stood at the foot of the bed, a quick splash of the water from the glass onto the forehead of the patient, and they would stand, as hale and hearty as ever they had been. But if death stood at the head, he would gravely shake his head, and the relatives would say what a pity it was that he had not come in time. But one day, the soldier received a message, saying that the old Tsar had fallen ill and sent for him. When he returned, he held up the glass, and horror and calamity he saw death stood at the head of his old friend the Tsar. "You cannot save him?" demanded the Tsar's wife. "You have saved beggars and peasants, dogs and less, but you will not save your master?" "If death needs a new friend," said the soldier, "I cannot fight her." "But," he said, "perhaps she will agree to take me instead." He held up the glass and spoke. "Madam, please take pity on a poor soul. Let the Tsar live. Take me instead." and Death walked away from the head of the Tsar's bed. The soldier anointed the Tsar's head with the water from the glass, and he sat up as hale and hearty as ever he had been. But now the soldier grew ill, and took to his bed, drawn with weariness and sick to his bones. His wife prayed by his bedside as she had for their son, but no one could heal him. At last, turning weakly in his bed, the soldier lifted the little glass with trembling hand to see Death stood right beside him. "Death," he said hoarsely, "do you see what is in my left hand?" "A sack," whispered that voice like a wind from the grave. "Then," said the soldier, "get in it." And even Death had no choice but to obey. The soldier, his strength returning, drew the string and leapt out of bed, shouting with joy, "I've caught Death! I've caught Death in my sack!" The news spread from the palace and out into the country until the whole world knew that Death was a prisoner. The soldier took his sack deep into the deepest forest and climbed to the top of the tallest tree he could find and hung it there so that no one would find it, and promptly lost his grip. He plunged toward the forest floor, but there is nothing like Death off duty to soften a fall, and he returned home whistling that ruby whistle for all he was worth. But a world without Death is a strange world indeed. People drowned at sea and faced a long swim home. Duels fought at dawn went on until midnight, until weariness took the combatants home. Battles raged, and at the end of a day's fighting, the air thick with arrows and smoke, all of the soldiers would rise to their feet again, confused. No one died. They merely grew older. And at last, one day, the soldier looked out of his window and saw the faces of wizened old souls, ancient friends, poor old folk with bandaged hands and feet, miserable and creaking and waiting to die, waiting for him to end their suffering. And he could not bear their sorrow. And so he returned to that tall tree in that deep forest. "Death," he called. "Are you alive up there?" "I am alive," whispered her dry voice like the rattle of bones. He climbed up the tree and took down the sack. "Death," said he, opening the sack, "I've led you a merry dance, but now it is time for you to take me and set the world to rights." But Death fled from him, for she, like the devils, feared the soldier in his sack. And so the soldier was left to grow older and more wizened every day, while around him friends, wife, son, all died in their right and proper time. The world righted itself, but the soldier lived on. He wandered the earth, and in time he found the passage to hell. He walked all of the long way down, and hammered on the gate. "Who is it?" demanded a devil. "I am but a poor, sinful soul who begs your leave to enter," the soldier said in his creaking old voice. "I have sinned before God and before man, and I have come to be tormented." "What's that in your hand?" demanded the devil. "Nothing," replied the soldier. "It's just an old sack." "A sack!" shrieked the devil, and slammed the gate. "Go away, and take that ghastly sack away with you." "Where else am I to go?" demanded the soldier. "We don't care," shrieked the devil. "Just go away." "All right," said the soldier. "I will leave, but give me a map to heaven and a way in, and 200 souls to take with me." The devils muttered angrily, but in fear of the soldier in his sack they sent out the 200 souls and a map to heaven. The soldier led the 200 sinful souls all the way up to heaven, and at last he reached the great gates. "Who goes there?" asked the gatekeeper. "It is I," said the soldier, "the man who caught Death in a sack. I have sinned against God, and so I bring him 200 sinful souls from hell, in hope that he might forgive me and allow me in with them. But the gatekeeper would not allow the soldier to enter paradise. The souls may enter, but alone. And crafty as ever, the soldier gave the sack to the last soul and whispered, "When you enter heaven, call me into the sack. Remember that I delivered you from torment." But, you see, there is no memory in heaven, for the great joy of paradise erases all else. And so when the soul entered, it cast the sack aside like so much rubbish. And for all I know, it lies there still, just inside the pearly gates. The soldier waited for a long time, and at last he hung his weary head and made his slow, shambling way back down to earth. And he wanders still, caught between life and death, a kind sinner, rejected by both heaven and hell, blessing the earth with his footsteps. Good night. Sleep well, and I'll see you tomorrow for another bedtime story.